Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back to the Networking RX podcast. I am your host, Frank Agan. I am the founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thanks to you who are tuned in today. Thanks to our subscribers. And thanks to those who have referred great guests to us. I had a guest last week. I had Deborah Roberts on, and she talked about how to get through, turn conflicts into a productive conversation. And when we stopped recording, we started to have a conversation. She was asking about AmSpirit, what AmSpirit Business Connections was, and I shared with her, and she shared with me that she has a program, and we'll get you a link to this, and then it's on her website, but how to make someone like you in under 5 minutes. And so at that point, I'm like, Deborah, can we hit record again? Can we do another episode? So I've got Deborah Roberts on here again today. For those who weren't with us last week, she's a licensed clinical social worker. She's an author, relationship expert, and a communication specialist. She has over 20 years of experience working with all types of challenging relationships at home, in the workplace, corporate, not-for-profit. And she has a book that's called The Relationship Protocol. And that describes her practical communication model for starting conversations, diffusing conflict, which we spent a lot of time on last episode, and really just having more fulfilling relationships in all areas of your life. She's also a well-respected speaker and trainer, and I really appreciate you sticking around for one more episode. Thank you very much, Deborah.
Oh, it's truly my pleasure. It's fun talking with you, Frank.
Well, I appreciate that. So how can I make somebody like me in under 5 minutes? It took me a year to get my wife to say yes.
Okay, well, you didn't have me to be in your ear. You need a little Cyrano in your ear there.
Yeah.
So, when I talk about getting someone to like you, and especially because this is a networking group, it's so appropriate here. So I had a feeling when I gave you that little tease that you wouldn't want me to say goodbye at that point. I attach likability to confidence. And so there is a fundamental human need to be liked. It just is. I'm not going to say I don't care what anybody else says because people are entitled to their opinion, but I believe, and there are studies that are done, that there's a fundamental human need. And that's our driver a lot of the time. We want people to like us. Even in business, they say, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And I might know you, but if I don't like you, I don't want to do business with you. Yeah. So the concept of what makes you likable. So now let's look at the person. In social situations, we're drawn to people who are friendly, right, and who seem to be interested in other people. They're curious. So it's kind of the same concept that if you and I are having a conversation and I'm friendly, I look you in the eye, I do all the things, the basic social graces, but also I'm curious about you. I might ask you a question, and I'm coming from a place of confidence and caring about what your experience is, interested in what you're doing. Looking at what's happening in your world. Right. It doesn't mean that it's kind of like a first date. When people go on a first date, they're excited to meet this person and they're actively listening. They're curious to get to know them. It's the same thing.
Right.
It should be the same thing in networking. It should be the same thing when you're trying to woo a new customer or talk with your partner about something. If I come to you from a place of confidence and I approach you where you see that I'm approaching you from a positive standpoint and I respect what you're thinking, I acknowledge what you're thinking. We don't have to agree,
Right.
but I validate what you're saying. I understand that this is a hot topic for you. This isn't upsetting for me, but it is for you. I respect that, as opposed to being argumentative. When we validate the other person's experience, when we respect and acknowledge what they're thinking, and we lean into a conversation, it makes someone lean in towards us.
Right.
If I don't love the expression wallflower, but just for lack of a better image, if we have that type of a personality, it doesn't feel as likable, and oftentimes it's interpreted as either unfriendly or not confident.
Right.
So if I know what to say and I know how to say it, because how I speak to you is as important as what I'm saying, that's going to make me feel more confident. That's why for me, I start by teaching people how to communicate. Because
Right.
if I feel equipped to communicate, that raises my confidence level, which then raises my likability factor. And I don't mean obviously overly confident or, you know, egocentric here, as much
Right.
as I'm confident to have a conversation.
I mean, what you said early on, people have a fundamental need to be liked. I totally agree with that. I think that's just hardwired into our DNA. That doesn't mean you need to make everybody like you, but if you go through life not caring if anybody likes you, you're going to have a sorry existence.
You'd be
Okay, it's
lonely.
very lonely, right? Very unsuccessful. Unless you have some job, working in a back office or driving a truck, or even still. So I totally agree with that. That we have to kind of create this likability. So in 5 minutes, what do I do?
That's exactly what you do. I
Okay.
meet you, I make eye contact with you, I lean into the conversation,
Okay.
and I get to know you, but I'm approaching you from the perspective of letting you know what my intention is.
Gotcha.
Hey, want to get to know you, or looking to resolve a conflict or a problem that we seem to be having. And it's approaching someone with a positive energy. It's approaching you with the concept of, hey, glad you made time to talk. Nice
Right.
to see you here. So that it's something about us, we, let's, right? It
Yep.
kind of joins us together. And when I present myself in a positive way that demonstrates confidence and demonstrates that I am interested in you, that I validate you, as soon as I validate you, you feel heard, and there's a connection now between us. Because, as I mentioned last week, the more important the relationship is, the more important it is to connect with their experience. And that is what makes people like us. When we connect with our partner's experience, people that are so close to us, when we connect with them, that makes them feel, that lets them know that they matter. If I matter to you, then I like you.
Yeah.
Because you've shown me that I'm someone who you're considering, you care about, you're thinking about, you're listening to.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
It's kind of simple.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think back to, my Uncle Dick. I always loved going to see my Uncle Dick because he was always so enthralled with things I was doing, and I'd be 10 years old. It's like, how could this man even care?
He
But
made you feel special.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
and he might not have, but he was in sales, so he probably did a good, he made a living doing that. But
Also, when we're having a conversation, I'm paying attention to the conversation, so I'm participating in it, but I'm also observing you.
right,
So I notice what's going on between us, and I react based on what's happening. What your family member did was he was keyed into you. He tuned into you. And that's what interpersonal skills are all about.
yeah,
It makes the other person feel like we want to connect with them. Actually, I heard David Solomon speak. I watched I guess it was a YouTube video, and he from Goldman Sachs, and he talked about how he was speaking in front of students at his alumni. I think it's Hamilton College, and he said to them, "You're all so smart, but if you don't understand emotional intelligence and how to have solid skill set for communicating and interpersonal skills, you will never be as successful as you want to be."
oh, I think that's so true. I mean, I I have a law degree, and I remember in law school every year there was one or two people who were brilliant. They're top of the class on law review and struggled to get a job, and everybody felt sorry for them. And the reality was they just didn't have that. They were brilliant. They knew the law, but they just couldn't connect with people. And that just underscored for me how important it was.
So can you see how that attaches to likability?
Oh, absolutely.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so it's a simple formula when you think about it's not so fancy, but that's what drives us.
Yeah.
You know, how to get someone to like you is to be a likable person, to be friendly, to be warm, to lean in, to let the other person know that you're listening to them, that they matter. And all of a sudden there's this dialogue happening, and you smile and you make eye contact, and your confidence, feeling equipped to have the conversation, that's what comes through.
Now, you had indicated just to our listeners that there's an article at the relationship protocol /like you, correct? That's there's a
Yeah, and it is basically that same title, how to make someone like you in only a few minutes. And it elaborates a little bit more on what I was talking about here today to help you to feel comfortable starting these conversations. And also I talk a little bit about negative self-talk, because sometimes that can get in our way too, and make us not feel as good about ourselves. And so it's also about being your own cheerleader. I can do this, throw your shoulders back and take a deep breath and, just go for it. And say to yourself, I'm in the driver's seat. I'm driving. I can do this. And sometimes just giving yourself that little push, being your own cheerleader, can make a big difference in how you approach a conversation that you might not otherwise have had.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me if you get that positive momentum, it's easier to keep. You're starting out on the right foot, so to speak. Well, I really appreciate you taking some extra time. Everyone, Deborah Roberts, her website is therelationshipprotocol.com. And what we were just talking about was how to make someone like you in under 5 minutes, or in a few minutes, the article will say. But you can find the article at therelationshipprotocol.com /like you, and I will get that in the show notes. Deborah, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Frank.
Finally, to wrap up, remember AmSpirit Business Connections has a unique franchise opportunity. It involves helping small business professionals become more successful through a referral-based networking program. It only involves a couple hours in the morning, a few days a week, and would be a great franchise for an attorney, accountant, realtor, business coach, or consultant to add on to what they're already doing and get better networked at the same time. Why just be a renter when you can own the building? Why just be in a business network when you can own the business network? If you or someone you know would like to learn more, please contact us using the email at the end of this podcast or the one we put in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.